The husband identified the rich wife in the morgue. And a minute later, a tramp burst into the hall and stopped the attendants with one phrase. Daniel skillfully maneuvered through the city, trying to avoid traffic jams. His hands were shaking, his nerves were on edge, and a male voice sounded over the loudspeaker. "It can't be, it's not Christina." He answered the call. "I understand your shock, Mr. Curtis, but that's why we're waiting for you for identification. We need to make sure that the woman on our table is your wife, Christina Curtis. She's so young. Only 31 years old. We wanted children so much." Daniel lamented. His insanely expensive sports car maneuvered easily between the cars. He was only a year older than his wife, but already owned his own company and had a significant profit. The family lacked nothing and was respected both in the city and beyond. Christina had been complaining of chest pains for a long time. "We both didn't pay attention to it," Daniel's words poured out. The unexpected interlocutor calmly listened to him, accustomed to people's behavior in grief. "She worked a lot. The whole business depended on the two of us. It's no wonder that." "I can't believe it." His voice sounded completely broken. "I refuse any analysis and autopsy in advance. It's absolutely pointless. Christina has already experienced enough pain. Let her body rest." In the morgue, Daniel met the pathologist, Paul Fisher. We talked on the phone. He lightly touched the shoulder of Christina's spouse with a mournful face. "Please come here." Daniel entered a brightly lit room with green tiles on the walls. A body lay on a stretcher under a sheet. A dangling wavy lock made Daniel sob. "My God." He struggled to hold back his tears as Mr. Fisher pulled the sheet off Christina's face. "It's my girl." "Accept my condolences," Paul said for the third time during the shift. He had seen a lot at work, but witnessing the emotions of the deceased's relatives was always difficult. Daniel's face clearly showed how broken he was, but still, he held himself together, not allowing the tears to flow. He gently touched the lifeless face. "Christina's body hasn't cooled yet. She was alive half an hour ago," he said hoarsely. "Why didn't I know that I spoke to her for the last time in the morning?" A few minutes later, Daniel walked out into the corridor and changed his expression. He calmly addressed the attendants. "Guys, I have a job for you. The price won't offend you. We need to arrange the funeral as soon as possible, and any extra fuss with tests and autopsy will only delay everything. Hurry up with releasing the body, prepare everything." Daniel handed a few bills to the eager attendants. "This is between us." "Of course, we won't tell anyone," Alex promised. He and his partner often engaged in illegal activities. After a couple of sentences for extortion and hooliganism, the two former inmates managed to get jobs as attendants in the morgue. "I'm counting on you." Daniel was pleased with how everything was arranged, but he didn't rush to leave for the office. He still had to inform all his relatives and acquaintances about the untimely death of his dear wife, listen to a lot of condolences, and welcome many guests. But for now, he had to make sure that Mr. Fisher wouldn't cause him any trouble, and Christina wouldn't interfere with him anymore. Finally, he would be able to say goodbye to her forever. At this time, Alex and Earl were preparing to transport Christina's body to the funeral home. "A beautiful lady she was, still young," Earl said, looking at Christina's face. "And her husband doesn't seem too torn up about it. What's on these rich folks' minds, I don't understand. First, he's all shaking over his wife's body, and now he wants to hurry up and bury her. Though, what's it to me? The main thing is I got paid, and I don't really need to do much. And don't get used to these little gigs. We've only been out for 4 months, and I'm not going back. All right, don't sweat it. Everything will be fine. We just need to avoid bumping into the pathologist." "Hey, Alex, losing it, are you?" Earl laughed, but still glanced at the deceased. "But for real, her skin does feel soft." He poked at her exposed shoulder and shivered. "All right, I never dealt with corpses and I won't start now." Alex crossed himself. The voice of the newly arrived Mr. Fisher made the attendant jump. "Where are you taking her? I haven't performed the autopsy yet. Come on, guys, roll her back here." Earl and Alex exchanged glances. This wasn't what they had discussed with Daniel. So, her husband refused the autopsy. He's in a hurry to arrange the funeral. Says he's a busy man, a businessman. Paul frowned and stepped into the corridor, immediately talking to Daniel. "I can't release your wife's body without performing the autopsy. To sign all the documents, I have to carry out the necessary procedures." "What will they give you?" "The situation is clear to me. Christina died of a heart attack." "I agree with that and don't need confirmation. I don't need any tests." "Are they going to bring my wife back to life?" Daniel asked indignantly. He noticed that Mr. Fisher was a principled man. So he wouldn't just neglect his professional duties, risk his reputation, his career. "Come closer," Daniel asked and reached into his pocket for his wallet. "Will this request satisfy you?" He handed Paul all the remaining bills. Paul raised his eyebrows in surprise, not expecting such a turn of events. He hurriedly took the money and stuffed them into his pants pocket so they wouldn't show. Looking around, he leaned closer to Daniel. "Well, that's a different story," he said in a low, friendly tone. "I'll gladly expedite the process of handing over your wife's body, Mr. Curtis. But I must perform the autopsy." "Fine, do your autopsy," snapped Christina's husband, but then calmed down. Now he didn't have to worry about the morgue staff. He bribed them all, and they wouldn't be able to snitch on him to anyone, or they'd lose their jobs. If the attendants lost a bit, Mr. Fisher would lose his license if he stirred up unnecessary trouble. Without wasting a minute, Paul got to work. "Guys, bring the body, we're going to perform the autopsy," he commanded, looking at Alex and Earl. Just a few seconds separated Christina from the irreversible. "Don't touch her. Don't touch this woman," suddenly shouted some madman, somehow ending up in the morgue, his voice echoing down the corridor. He was breathing heavily and clutching his chest, trying to catch his breath. "Who's this crazy guy?" Earl stared at him. Before them stood an ordinary dirty tramp in ragged clothes, assembled from a few trash cans. It was hard to determine the age of the tired-looking man with his tangled beard and thick eyebrows. "Hey, you lost or something?" Alex addressed him. "Or you got a problem in your head? Get out of here, this ain't a circus." "That's my wife, don't touch her." "Call the police." And Andrew pointed angrily at Daniel, who froze in place, thunderstruck. He couldn't even find the words to try to shut the uninvited guest up. "Call immediately." "What are you waiting for, idiots? What's all this noise?" Mr. Fisher stepped into the corridor. He looked sternly at everyone present. "Christina was brought to you, she's my wife. Don't cut her, call the police. I beg you." "All right," nodded Paul and took off his clean gloves. He shot Daniel a hostile glance. If only he knew what Daniel had offered him money for, he would have never taken it. The police officers who arrived at the scene initially took Andrew for a lunatic. "What do we have here? Drunken ramblings?" Officer Derek Evans asked wearily, looking at him. "I'm not drunk or crazy. My name is Andrew Floyd, and Christina, who was brought here this morning, is my wife. Or rather, my ex-wife." "Floyd? The one?" Detective Henry calmly gasped, trying to make out the missing businessman from 5 years ago and the unkempt vagrant before him. "The one," Andrew nodded. "And this," he turned his gaze to the subdued Daniel, whom Alex and Earl had prevented from fleeing before the police arrived, "this is Daniel's former friend. Now I know everything about you. I know your vile nature." No one expected Andrew to lunge at his former friend and punch him in the cheek. Daniel slammed into the wall and hit his head. Henry and Derek grabbed him by the arms, holding him in place. "I'll kill you myself for her, scum." Andrew kept struggling. "Did you hear that? Do you hear?" Daniel shouted. This is a direct threat of violence. You are all witnesses." The men's quarrel was interrupted by a loud female scream. Everyone rushed into the autopsy room, where the frightened Christina was sitting on the floor, hugging herself. "Christy!" Andrew collapsed beside her, covering her with his jacket and holding her close. "My love. I'm here, I'm with you again." Christina was shaking, she was weak and scared. Several pairs of eyes stared at her in horror. Daniel turned paler than anyone. "Look at that. If you hadn't shown up, they would have buried her already." Earl exclaimed, realizing that Mr. Fisher had nearly performed an autopsy on a living person. "All right," Henry surveyed those present. "Doctor, examine the victim and give her a sedative. And you," he pointed at Andrew, "come with me. I'll call the guys." Derek nodded to him. "I'll stay here, watch over the victim, and question the pathologist." On the way to the police station, Andrew was shaking. He couldn't believe what had happened to him in just a couple of hours. Now his life would change, everything would be back to how it was before. He still hoped he could reclaim everything, but most of all he worried about Christina's fate. He loved her so much, even though he hadn't been with her for 5 years. How would she be without him? Could he trust that pathologist? Andrew didn't relax even when Detective Conley started talking to him. He was given a mug of hot sweet tea and treated well. "Tell me everything step by step, Mr. Floyd," Henry requested. Andrew sighed, closed his eyes slightly, and began. "You know who I am. 5 years ago, I was traveling to Lakeville for negotiations with Daniel. We knew each other since university, studied economics together, dreamed of our own business together, and our business philosophies aligned. I considered Daniel my friend." With these words, Andrew gripped the mug handle tightly, realizing how wrong he had been. "I knew him before I met Christina. We often hung out together. Sometimes Danny would introduce us to his flings, but his relationships never lasted long. I want to emphasize that I trusted Daniel like a brother. I never even thought he could betray me, let alone like this." Our meeting with potential partners in Lakeville promised a lucrative collaboration. Danny and I were already anticipating a huge profit and were over the moon. We were being hailed in all the newspapers back then, young, ambitious. We were an example for young people to follow. Everyone dreamed of such rapid success. Our company was growing surprisingly fast. When it all began, we couldn't even dream that in a few years, we'd be able to buy our own home. So, Andrew cleared his throat. "It's about a 3-hour drive to Lakeville, but before the trip, I had a hearty meal, and Daniel kept insisting we stop on the way for a snack at a restaurant. I didn't refuse, and I didn't even suspect anything when the supposed best restaurant in Oak Bay turned out to be just a diner, with some riffraff hanging around nearby. They targeted us as soon as we got out of the car. Danny never backed down and could stoop to any level to prove his superiority. I didn't even notice how I ended up in the middle of a brawl. But they only beat me. At the time, I didn't realize it was Danny's doing. He lured me into that town where nobody knew us, hired some thugs, and then disappeared. I got a good beating that day. I spent the night in the alley where I was beaten the day before. I woke up with a pounding head and a blank mind. I lost my memory, and from that moment on, I didn't even know who I was. A group of vagrants took me in and taught me how to survive. Together, we roamed from one town to another until we settled here. I had no idea how close I was to my former life. For a while, I was a hero to the locals, and then I became invisible. And today, I went to the store for tea and a pastry, as usual in the mornings. Sometimes they let me eat right there, watch TV. That's how I found out about the news in the city and the world. Today there was a report about Christina's death. They said the millionaire Curtis's wife died of a heart attack right in the company's office. Our company, mine and Danny's. They showed Christina's photo up close, and something snapped in my head. I cried out in pain. Her face stirred something inside me. Memories flooded my mind one after another. The store clerk got scared when I burst into tears right there in the shop. My beloved Christina was dead. I couldn't come to terms with that thought. And then I felt inside me that I needed to go to the city morgue. I had to, that was all I knew. I don't know how to explain it. Call it a premonition if you want, but I wasn't wrong. I was sure she was there, that she was alive. That I would make it in time. Detective Conley and everyone who witnessed Andrew's testimony were in shock. There was no doubt. Even at first glance, it was clear that the story had been told by the businessman who disappeared 5 years ago. It was an incredible, even fateful story. And one day, Andrew not only remembered who he was, but also lost his wife. And then he saved her from death at the hands of his treacherous friend. Soon, the whole city buzzed with the unbelievable incident. The police kept silent, but the journalists still caught wind of the sensation. News reports began to appear about the miraculous resurrection, the businessman's return, and the true identity of his friend. By the time Andrew arrived at the hospital to talk to his beloved, Daniel had already escaped. "I won't stay here," he muttered as soon as the police swarmed into the morgue. He glared menacingly at Earl and Alex, who had been dragged into this dubious affair. "If you spill the beans about our business, you'll regret it." His friends, recently released from prison, understood his meaning. They knew who they could defy and who it was better not to cross. "Doctor, how is she?" Andrew was only concerned about Christina's condition, who, after what happened, wasn't eager to talk to anyone. She gave her statement to Officer Evans and asked not to be disturbed. After the dose of drugs given to the patient, her body weakened. But the 4-drip will do its job. Another issue is her psychological state. Right now, her mood is volatile, so be prepared for tears or hysteria. After all, you're in a difficult situation, as I heard, the doctor advised Andrew. He entered the room and froze for a moment. The same clear eyes of his now former wife were looking at him openly. "Christy, my dear, forgive me. I didn't even know." She turned away, unable to meet the gaze of the man she had betrayed. "I thought you were dead," she covered her face with her hands. "You disappeared, and I was shattered. Daniel was there. He helped me through the grief and helped me get back on my feet. He was there when I couldn't see anyone else. I don't think you'll forgive me after this." "I won't forgive myself." "What are you talking about?" Andrew sat on a chair next to the bed. "You didn't know. You didn't know how deceitful and cunning he was. It's all a plan to get rid of both of us. You're just as much a victim as I am. But I married him. It wasn't even a year after you disappeared, and I got married. So rashly." Christina sobbed, and Andrew just hugged her. We'll get through this, if you still want to be with me, of course." The former spouse's house was surrounded by reporters and cameramen when Christina was discharged. Daniel didn't stand out here either. He didn't even suggest that Christina change her place of residence after her first husband disappeared. Daniel simply took him out of the game, taking over everything that once belonged to him. The company that 2 young friends had opened in the past now belonged to Daniel and Christina. "I need to get back on track. I've gotten used to not using technology," Andrew warned his beloved. "I need to catch up on what I missed out on. Today's specialists understand our field much better than I do. Don't worry, we'll manage. The company is still here, everything is working," Christina reassured him. "You know, I'm quite capable." After Andrew's return, she threw herself into work, involving him in it. It saved her from awkward moments with her ex-husband in the big quiet house. The past 5 years had changed both of them so much that now their relationship was overcoming a serious crisis. They had breakfast and dinner together, politely conversed, but avoided touching on sensitive topics. The police were tirelessly working on the sensational case, but Daniel seemed to have disappeared into thin air. He was elusive, vanished without a trace. When it was decided to freeze his accounts to make it harder for him to leave as far as possible, and even to another country, it turned out that Daniel had pre-planned several options for unforeseen situations and transferred all his funds from his account to an offshore one. Authorities had no access to it, making the search for Daniel significantly more difficult. Meanwhile, Christina and Andrew lived under the same roof as if they were strangers. Each had their own burden on their souls, but they didn't rush to share it. Both worried about Daniel's fate. They dreamed of the moment when he would be caught and held accountable for all his crimes. Sometimes the former spouses spent evenings together, watching movies, talking about distant topics, avoiding personal matters. They were afraid they couldn't make up for lost time. "It's hard for me to believe that we're living like strangers now," Christina shared her feelings over dinner one evening. 5 years ago, we were newlyweds, making plans. And then fate shattered everything for us. Can we ever get that back? For the first time in weeks of living with her, Andrew dared to take her hand without permission. "My dear, just remember how it all started. Can't we do it again? Has everything inside us died? When I was a drifter and didn't even remember you, I still missed you terribly. It hurt me a lot to be without you. Not physically, but the separation from you hit me hard." That evening, they spent it sitting together, embracing. Andrew and Christina didn't rush. They didn't want to scare away the trust that had rekindled between them. The former spouses reminisced about their first encounters. "You had just graduated from college back then. So young, with your eyes shining, and that red diploma." Andrew remembered with admiration. "I even remember what you were wearing." "Yes, no one wanted to hire me. During my internship, I performed exceptionally well. Several firms recommended me, but none of them dared to hire me full-time. I was counting on you then. Your demands as a young company couldn't be too high. When I saw you, two lanky fledgling entrepreneurs." "What do you mean fledgling?" Andrew pretended to be offended. "Oh, you should have seen yourself back then. So pompous, even though you're only 2 years older than me. I knew I had to toss my hair and flutter my eyelashes in front of you. And when you saw me in action..." Christina chuckled, just like she did on her first date with Andrew. "I never underestimated you," he declared. "Sure, you impressed me with your looks, but without your knowledge, the company wouldn't have been as successful. At least, not as quickly. You helped us a lot, and you deserve the position of CEO that you hold now." Andrew's return to his former field wasn't easy. He became a respected, well-groomed man who lacked nothing. But he realized how far behind he was compared to modern specialists. Without succumbing to stubborn pride, he attended business courses that covered the latest trends in the business world and social networks. "We have a whole department dedicated to this," Christina explained to Andrew with satisfaction. 70% of purchases are made online. And the number of customers has increased due to delivery services. "Yes, everything has changed," Andrew nodded without regret when Christina showed him around the office. "It's enviable that I wasn't part of every new stage. I would have liked to see how you grew." But Andrew had reasons for disappointment. Employees who worked in the company under Daniel and Christina's leadership could only hear about the clever and resourceful Andrew. They learned more from the news when the once-declared missing former husband of their boss miraculously returned. Everyone expected incredible decisions, new breakthrough ideas from him, but they were disappointed. "Andrew, understand, these are people of another generation. They're younger and have no trouble with technology," Christina told him. "You can get as angry as you want, but your courses mean nothing if you refuse to apply the knowledge in practice. We've long abandoned old methods. You have to accept that." "I know," Andrew admitted his mistakes. "Even the junior staff sees me as an ancient relic. I'm trying to be someone people can rely on. I want to run things wisely, but I need to get used to it." But it wasn't just the company's situation that bothered Andrew. The results of Christina's blood tests, conducted to detect the presence of poison, made him nervous. From the moment of his return, he suspected that Christina wasn't telling him everything. "Christy, I can't take it anymore. I can't keep guessing what's going on inside you," he said straight out in the office. He couldn't wait until they got home. Christina paled. It was clear she was caught off guard. What you're about to hear might throw you off track, she warned, lowering her gaze. My blood test results showed. You didn't get poisoned, did you? Were they clean? Andrew couldn't hold back and immediately apologized. No, it's not that. Well, I'm pregnant. From Danny, of course. I didn't know how to tell you about it. Andrew paused for a moment, sighed, and then spoke. He was your husband, you were planning a family. I have no reason to blame you, and the child, under no circumstances, is to blame, Andrew stated confidently. Andrew couldn't see any reason to hide such wonderful news. I was afraid it would push you away. We're already very cautious with each other, and I was so tired of living in constant tension. Well, we don't need that. It's harmful for the baby. Andrew sat on Christina's desk and embraced her. I'm not going anywhere, no one can make me. And this little one is ours, nobody else's. He wouldn't even want a father like Daniel. Christina couldn't hold back her tears. She had kept all her anxieties inside for so long that relief came swiftly. They and Andrew would be a family again. They would have a child, just as they had once dreamed. Now I'll definitely have to swallow my pride, Andrew said, rocking Christina in his arms. I won't let you sit around the office so much. You'll rest at home, eat various healthy snacks, and work remotely. Of course, I won't lock you up, but you've taken on too much, the employees are relaxed. I can see your grip now. Christina laughed, wiping away tears. The whole truth was known, and she was no longer afraid of rejection. Andrew remained just as sensitive, caring, and attentive. We'll have a family. I've wanted my baby so much, and now he'll be here. Thank you for accepting us. In the following months, Andrew continued to surprise Christina. He tamed his ego and began to learn from the experiences of new employees to integrate into the work. Soon, he would have to take on the role of head of the company because Christina had to take care of her health. Naturally, she filed for divorce, and the former spouses modestly tied the knot again at the registry office. Since Andrew's return, journalists had been relentlessly pursuing them, so the newlyweds acted cautiously. They hid Christina's pregnancy and hired bodyguards to ward off the reporters crowding around their house in search of the next sensation. Sooner or later, they'll figure it out and start trumpeting about the baby, Christina reassured her husband. Soon I won't be able to hide my belly. You're reacting too sharply, they earn their bread and butter this way. Oh, I think I'll build a 10-meter fence around the house soon. Andrew pretended he hadn't heard anything. He was irritated by others meddling in their lives. Besides, he didn't want Daniel, wherever he was, to find out about the baby. Andrew's only dream was to protect his family from outsiders. With him nearby, Christina felt calm. She trusted Andrew more. Between them, there was that same tenderness that had driven them crazy several years ago. You've become too tense, she would say, massaging her husband's shoulders. I can't imagine how you're coping. You've changed a lot, and it makes me happy. Andrew proudly accepted his wife's praise. By putting his family's well-being first, he found the strength to manage the company. In just 3 months, he had to absorb a lot of new information, find an approach to the team, and take over some of Christina's responsibilities. Now, she appeared much less often in the office but conducted conferences with employees via video link. And soon, Andrew faced widespread discontent among his subordinates. Mr. Floyd, things are really bad. Complaints about reduced salaries are increasing every day. I know the situation is tough. Mr. Curtis let us down, financing has been cut drastically. But the employees haven't been receiving their full pay for months. Our market positions have fallen, everyone is working hard to rise, and they're not getting any rewards for it. Yes, I admit, I preferred not to notice our real prospects for a long time, he agreed with his deputy. Therefore, Mr. Miller, we need to downsize. I can't afford such a staff at the moment. Approve the requests of those who want to leave. We'll work with those who are committed to the cause, and I'll ensure they have a decent income. It'll be fairer this way. Christina did her best to support her husband. She hoped that the police would eventually find Daniel and hold him accountable. After all, he had fled with money that didn't belong to him alone. But months passed without any reassuring news from law enforcement. Andrew returned home more and more exhausted and irritable. Only the lively kicks of their developing son in Christina's belly could calm him. She, on the other hand, was tireless. She didn't want to quit her job and often stayed up late with her laptop while her husband returned from work and scolded her. "Darling, but soon the baby will be here, and you won't be able to tear yourself away from the screen like this. Oh, come on. After all, I am still a business lady." It was as if Andrew had predicted the arrival of little Ollie. The baby decided he wanted to be born that very night. Christina felt the bed beneath her become wet. "Andy!" She panicked, shaking her husband. "Andrew, wake up. I think it's starting." An ambulance rushed the agitated Christina to the maternity ward, and Andrew was so worried he was afraid to drive himself. The thought of the agony awaiting his wife threw him off balance. "Please, hurry," he urged the paramedic when they loaded his wife onto the stretcher. "Andy, stop fretting. They know what they're doing." Andrew paced the corridor of the maternity ward. He couldn't understand why Christina was so much calmer than him. It was terrifying to imagine what she was really going through. She had probably prepared herself for childbirth. After all, she often said how much she wanted to be rid of the burden of her belly. Exhausted, Christina fell into a blissful sleep when little Ollie was moved to a separate room where all the babies were kept. In the morning, when it was time to feed her son, a new blow awaited the young mother. "What do you mean? What do you mean Ollie isn't here?" She didn't understand at first, demanding answers from the medical staff. "Are you saying you lost my baby? Are you out of your minds? This is impossible." Andrew rushed to the maternity ward as soon as he received the distressing call from his wife. The police also arrived promptly. Doctors and midwives hurried around the ward but couldn't retrieve the lost baby from thin air. "So Iris, who worked here on the night shift, is missing," Detective calmly clarified, questioning the entire staff. "Find him immediately," Christina yelled at anyone within earshot. She didn't break down in tears, succumbing to despair. Instead, she terrorized the entire maternity ward, demanding that everyone sit still. "I'll sue you all. Every last one of you. Darling, you need to calm down. You're still too weak." Andrew tried to get her to lie down, but she refused to cooperate. He used all his connections to mobilize the necessary forces to search for the newborn. "Iris isn't home. The neighbors said they didn't see her in the morning and didn't hear a baby crying," Derek shared with his partner. "She has a cottage in Chimdale, inherited from her grandfather. Did you know?" Iris's replacement, Helen, who was called in to cover for her runaway colleague, replied. "Let's head out immediately," Henry nodded to Derek. "We'll find out the address on the way. We need to find out about her relatives, who she met with. Maybe she got into trouble and stole the baby without thinking about the consequences." "Yeah, or maybe she planned it all along," Officer Evans grimly remarked, which did little to comfort Andrew and Christina. Iris didn't hear the 2 police cars pull up to her wooden house. She was too exhausted from Ollie's incessant crying, as he refused to drink the formula despite being terribly hungry. "Hush now, hush. We need to be patient for a little while longer," Iris rocked him on her tired arms. "He'll come for you soon. You haven't been abandoned. Don't be afraid. Iris Vlasova, come out of the house with the baby immediately." A stern male voice blared through the megaphone. Iris knew she had no way out, and her accomplice hadn't shown up yet. How could she have trusted him so much? "Iris, I repeat. Come out with the baby right now and make things easier for yourself," Officer Evans's voice urged her. The persuasions worked. Iris wrapped Ollie in a small blanket and opened the front door, extending one hand forward. "I'm unarmed," she shouted. One of the officers immediately approached Iris and took Ollie from her. "I didn't do anything to him. I wasn't planning to." She insisted through tears as they made her put her hands behind her back to handcuff her wrists. Having calmed down, Iris spilled everything at the police station, not withholding a single detail. Daniel Curtis, he's my lover. We've been together for over a year. I knew he was married, but he said the passion between them had long since faded, that they lived like strangers. Iris sniffled as she recounted. Were you planning to abduct the baby to raise him together? Yes. No. I don't know. Danny went crazy when he found out Christina was pregnant. Even though she reconciled with her ex-husband, Danny calculated everything. The baby was definitely his. He has a lot of acquaintances around town or debtors. He knew when Christina's pregnancy was confirmed. He never wanted kids, at least he never discussed it with me. I thought it was too early to plan a family, so I didn't ask. And Danny always seemed so free-spirited to me. I was even surprised that he was so fixated on the idea of taking the baby for himself. I couldn't refuse to help him. He always knew how to persuade me. Iris admitted, ashamed of herself. You know, he's one of those men who can choose the right words to get what he wants. It always happened to me, and now it'll be a lesson for me. Am I facing jail time? If you tell us his exact whereabouts, maybe you'll get away with a suspended sentence. Derek looked attentively at Iris. Me? I don't know where he disappeared to. Believe me, I'm not covering for him. Danny always does whatever he wants and doesn't answer to anyone. He has his own affairs, maybe even illegal ones. And he always told me it's better not to get involved in them. Christina was ready to strangle Iris with her own hands for putting their son in danger. When you find that scumbag, he'll pay for everything. She told Henry, who returned her child to her and explained the midwife's role in the case. He won't get away with it, you can be sure of that. For attempted double murder, embezzlement on a large scale, various tax frauds, and kidnapping a child. He'll be locked up for life for all of this. Thank you. Andrew shook the policeman's hand. And please, find him as soon as possible. We want to know that our boy is safe. And I'm worried about my wife too. Despite the police's efforts, surveillance of Iris's rural house yielded no success. Daniel likely saw the police car and the commotion that engulfed the village. So he didn't even bother approaching the place where he hoped to meet his abducted son. But Christina and Andrew received some good news. We managed to locate Daniel's account, Officer Evans informed them. It's been frozen, so he won't be able to use it no matter how hard he tries. And we know he's in our area, and the lack of money will hinder his ability to hide and move freely. Thank you. Please keep us updated, Christina replied. She felt more at ease knowing that their personal security and police patrols were guarding their home for safety. When will we have a peaceful life? Sighed Christina. My little one. She cooed over her son. I won't let anything harm you. We won't. Andrew touched Ollie's tiny nose with his finger and kissed his wife. Whatever happens, we need to keep living and raising our miracle. Andrew continued to go to the office every day but often called home and asked Christina to show him their son. Congratulations, shouted his remaining colleagues in the firm. May your little one grow up healthy and bring joy to his parents. And this is for your family from us. Lily, who was in charge of office cleanliness, handed the director a basket with various jars and creams for the baby. Thank you so much, friends. This is new to us, so don't be surprised if I come back even more exhausted than before. The colleagues dispersed to their places, and Andrew made a few calls to organize a small banquet during lunchtime to treat his subordinates in honor of Ollie's birth. But a few days later, the irreparable happened. Andrew was sure he was one of the last to leave the office. He saw Lily on the way out, finishing up cleaning the last rooms. See you tomorrow, Mr. Floyd, she said, smiling as she passed by. He didn't bother to set the office alarm. He knew the cleaner would take care of it when she finished. He had only left work for a few minutes when he received a signal about a fire. It can't be. He gasped and called the fire department. He was the first to arrive at the firm's building and rushed inside. Andrew was certain Lily hadn't left yet, and the building was already engulfed in flames. "Lily!" he yelled. "Lily, respond. We need to leave urgently, everything is on fire here. Lily, where are you?" But the girl didn't respond. She had lost consciousness because she was too close to the utility room where the fire broke out. Andrew didn't bother trying to extinguish the fire. Although the thought of losing his life in the fire haunted him, preventing clear thinking. Lily was saved. Saved at the cost of burns on Andrew's face. He didn't feel the pain due to shock, but when Christina arrived at the scene of the fire, she screamed upon seeing his melted cheek. Andrew also suffered burns on his body, but at least they could be hidden under clothing. After being hospitalized and discharged from the hospital, Andrew fell into despair. He couldn't bear to look at his disfigured face and didn't want to show himself to his son. "He shouldn't see me like this, I frighten him." He recoiled from Ollie when Christina tried to hand him the baby. "Darling, please, don't say that. He feels that you're his dad and he needs you. Please, don't push him away." But arguing with Andrew was difficult. Having lost the office in the fire, he didn't know what to do next. His life was crumbling once again. He missed the opportunity of his lifetime when everything was just starting to get back on track. "We'll try again," Christina reassured him, stroking his hair. "We're both experts." "Yes, but we don't have any money. We can't spend all our savings starting from scratch. We have a child, we mustn't endanger his future. We need to think rationally and live within our means." Andrew had to wear a mask to appear in public. His appearance sparked unhealthy curiosity among onlookers, and some even shouted or turned away with expressions of dislike on their faces. Andrew managed to get a job in the office of a large company and spent several months working diligently to prove his professionalism. Now he was an ordinary employee, not a manager. Together with Christina, they loved to spend time with their son, trying to devote every free minute to him. But Ollie's mom didn't stay at home for long. After sending him to daycare, she also found a job. Andrew no longer neglected his child and over time came to terms with how he looked. Ollie adored his parents and always gravitated towards them. The 3-year-old boy was curious and easily made friends in daycare. "Lily invited us over," Christina informed her husband. After Andrew saved his former colleague, she constantly came to them with words of gratitude. Sometimes she would babysit Ollie when both his parents were busy with work. "I'm glad she met a decent man and now is a mom herself." "Yes, you two became great friends." Andrew smiled contentedly. "You treat her like a younger sister." "Indeed, we're practically family now. Such events bring people closer together." Years went by. With each passing birthday of Ollie, Andrew and Christina marveled at how quickly time flew. "You're already in school." Christina cried after her son's first day, squatting down in front of him. "You've grown up so fast." "Mom, don't cry," Ollie wiped her tears with his warm palms. "We should be happy. I'll grow up soon, start earning lots of money to pay for Dad's surgery." He's embarrassed about his scars. "Oh, my observant boy." His mother hugged him. Unfortunately, kind-hearted Ollie became the target of bullying at school. The other kids saw Andrew, who always walked with his head down in the street, covering his scars with his coat or jacket. "Your dad's ugly. Your dad's ugly." The bullies taunted Ollie. "My parents call him Quasimodo." Another spoiled child laughed. "Don't call him that, my dad isn't scary." Ollie defended his father, barely holding back tears of hurt, but his distress only fueled the little troublemakers. "I'll go to school and make all the parents ashamed of how they raise their kids," raged Andrew upon learning that his son was being teased again because of his scars. "Aren't they ashamed, huh? Don't they know how much pain they're causing him?" "We need to go together," Christina suggested. "If neither the deputy nor the homeroom teacher does anything, we'll find other ways. I'm tired of seeing our son in tears all the time." It's all because of me. Andrew sat on the couch, holding his head. He blamed himself for Ollie's bullying at school. Don't you dare think like that, Christina declared. We need to gather all the parents together with their kids to explain to them where your scars came from. Let them know that Ollie's dad is a hero, that he sacrificed his business, health, and appearance to save another person's life. Well, who among them would do that? I think very few. Don't turn me into a hero, Andrew immediately objected. The burns he received made him even more modest. Most of the time, he wanted to be the most inconspicuous person in society, but Christina knew her husband was noble, honest, and decent. Why should you and Ollie suffer because of these ignoramuses? No, I won't allow them to mock you or him. Still, Christina insisted, and in front of the entire class, she reprimanded those very bullies who mocked her family. However, the effect of her fiery speech was short-lived. Now, the troublemakers avoided teasing Ollie on school grounds but harassed him on the bus ride home. Hey, Quasimodo's son. Morty, who was sitting 2 seats away, said loudly to Ollie. You, ugly, I'm talking to you. Leave me alone. He replied angrily. Yeah, he hides behind his mom's skirt, and his dad didn't even show up to school, said another bully, and they both laughed. Ollie sat there, burning with shame. He knew that the adult passengers could hear everything, but it didn't occur to anyone to stand up for him. At the next stop, when most people got off, Morty and Arthur moved closer to Ollie and started nudging him in the shoulder. So, where's your hero dad? Why won't he defend you, huh? The driver, who could now hear the teasing conversations of the first graders, couldn't tolerate their insolence and walked into the cabin at the next stop. What's going on, kids? Should I kick you out while the bus is moving? His voice sounded menacing, so Ollie's bullies immediately fell silent. How dare you threaten other people's children? An elderly passenger spoke up. You'd better ask why their parents aren't raising them properly. Unwilling to listen to lectures, Arthur and Morty slipped out onto the street. Ollie breathed a sigh of relief. Is everything okay? The driver asked him. Yes, fine, Ollie replied quietly. Thank you so much. They always pick on me. Sit in the front seat, let's talk. The man waved his hand, returning to his place. What's your name? I'm Ollie Curtis, he replied without thinking. Curtis? What's your mom's name? The driver's voice changed. Christina. Do you know her or something? Ollie didn't notice that the bus driver fell silent, trying to suppress unwanted tears. After all, he didn't just know Ollie's mother, he was his biological father. Daniel had been living the life of an ordinary person for several years now, not because all his assets were frozen by the police. The reason was different. The birth of his son changed him. He knew that Andrew would be a better father to the boy than he ever could. And his final act of revenge was the firm that he and his former friends had opened together many years ago. At that moment, upon learning that he had almost taken Andrew and Lily's lives with his own hands, Daniel realized how far he had fallen. He was scared of himself. Now he was someone's father, deceitful, vengeful, selfish. Could such a person be responsible for anyone, be an example to follow? Daniel was shocked by the encounter with his son. After all, he wanted to sink to the bottom and never be seen again. Let Ollie grow up with loving parents who could give him a good upbringing. But now Danny realized that he had seen Ollie before, that the boy constantly returned home on this route. Are you okay, son? The boy asked. When it was his turn to get off, he tapped the cards on the machine and looked closely at the adult. Yes, kid, don't worry. I just have allergies acting up, that's all. Run along, take care of yourself. Daniel dared to pat his son's head. At that moment, he felt such tender feelings as never before. Ollie exited the bus with a smile, leaving Daniel completely lost. The bullies no longer bothered Ollie on the bus, they even teased him less at school, choosing a new harmless target for their constant bullying. Now Ollie returned home from school in high spirits. He really liked the driver, whom he had befriended. As soon as he entered the bus, the boy stood next to Daniel, and they talked quietly. "Your drawings are very beautiful. You deserve to win the contest." He praised his son. "I loved drawing when I was a child too. It's been a while since I've tried." "It's a lot of fun," Ali nodded with a smile. "Next year, I'll also start swimming." The friendship between Ali and Daniel blossomed on its own. The father cherished every second spent with his son and rejoiced that nobody teased him anymore. Ali complained to him about the bullying he faced. "Mom says it's ugly," Ali confided. "My dad pulled a person out of the fire. Can you imagine? He didn't wait for the firefighters, he went into the flames himself. That's why he has scars." It hurt Daniel to hear that Ali and his family suffered because of his terrible deed. He often wanted to confess to his son, to tell him that he had ruined his dad and mom's lives for many years. But he couldn't burden the child with that. If he confessed, Ali would hate him, and they would never see each other again. "So, you befriended the bus driver?" Christina asked her son. "Yes, he's really nice. He shut up Arthur and Morty." Ali shared joyfully. "I'll show him to you right now." He reached for his phone's gallery. "I took a video of him driving the bus." Christina gasped, almost dropping her son's phone. She clearly saw her ex-husband. Panic engulfed her. Daniel approached Ali. God knows what he was planning. "Oh my God, son!" she exclaimed. "Honey, what's wrong?" Andrew peered over her shoulder and froze. "Ali, is this your friend?" "Yes," the son replied cautiously. He didn't understand why Mom and Dad were so tense. "We're going to the police, right now," Christina whispered to her husband. "I won't allow him to be around." "He's definitely up to something," agreed the agitated Andrew. The police acted swiftly and arrested Daniel that same evening. His encounter with Andrew and Christina took place in the corridor of the station. "Forget about Ali, you'll never see him again, you scumbag." Andrew grabbed him by the jacket and shook him. "I confess to everything, everything. Just let us communicate," pleaded Daniel. The spouses exchanged glances. Their common enemy had noticeably changed. His appearance alone testified to the heinous crimes he had committed. "Ali is the only good thing I have left. I'm happy he's mine." "Only if he wants to have anything to do with you," Christina said firmly. Although they hated Daniel with all their hearts, they didn't intend to lie to Ali, as he had already become attached to his biological father. Daniel's trial took place several months later, as his lawyer had to work hard to try to build a defense strategy for multiple violent crimes. Ali insisted on being in the courtroom with his parents. "Are you sure about this?" Christina worried. She and Andrew had agreed not to turn their son against Danny. After all, he would spend at least 20 years behind bars. "Yes, Mom, Uncle Danny is going to be accused, but he must have at least one family member." As expected, Daniel was sentenced to 17 years. Andrew believed the sentence was too short to cover the calculated atrocities he had committed. Ali cried when Daniel looked at him after the verdict was announced. He waved to his son, but couldn't muster a carefree smile. "Don't be afraid, son." Christina hugged him to her side and stroked his cheek. "You can write him letters. Maybe you'll see him when you're older," Andrew whispered to him. The spouses knew that Ali couldn't distinguish between good and bad deeds, and they didn't want to shame him for wanting to keep in touch with his biological father. After the trial, Daniel's account was unfrozen, and the money that belonged to Andrew and Christina returned to the family. They once again became the owners of their incomes. "Well, finally, we can afford your surgery." Christina jumped on her husband and kissed him. "My God, will I really not feel those looks anymore?" Andrew sighed, still not believing his luck. It took several procedures for his face and body to look the same as before. "Well, almost. You seem like a different person," Christina observed the man with curiosity. "You have a new husband now." He laughed and hugged her. "Daddy, I love you no matter what." Ali added and joined his parents' embrace. It doesn't matter to me. Having dropped out of the business world for almost 8 years, the Curtis spouses realized that they couldn't catch up on what they missed and decided to invest their money in a new venture. They wanted to enjoy running a business without chasing after any particular goals. Christy, what about getting into furniture making? My father made everything with his own hands. I helped him a lot in the workshop, and I was pretty good at it. Before things started with Daniel, I even worked at a furniture factory and learned a thing or two. And then maybe we could start our own production. We could make custom exclusive furniture. That's an interesting idea, Christina nodded. We just need to research it better and give it a try. Since we haven't invested anywhere yet, we can explore different options and decide. The spouses decided to focus on furniture production. They rented a space, bought equipment, learned themselves, and hired experienced craftsmen. Social media did its job, and soon Christina and Andrew started receiving orders from their first clients. The reviews of their growing enterprise were positive, and orders became regular. I've come up with several ways to attract customers. Take a look when you have a moment. Christina handed her husband a list. She didn't often participate in the furniture making process. Instead, she focused on managing social media or painting the products. You chose the easiest one. Andrew teased his wife. To which Christina playfully stuck out her tongue, paintbrush in hand. After a year and a half of hard work in the workshop, the spouses could proudly say that they had done their best. They had built a team of professionals who processed numerous orders daily to the satisfaction of their clients. I think we deserve a vacation, Christina announced one evening, collapsing onto the couch in the living room after a long day. Me too, shouted Ali, plopping down next to his mom. I finished the year with all A's. Well, then I simply must take my hard-working folks to the seaside, laughed Andrew. I haven't done anything myself. The family went on vacation together with Lily's family. They stayed in luxurious rooms and spent evenings lounging on the beach in the cool seawater, went on excursions, tried out water sports, and even went scuba diving. Walter is amazing. So talented and hardworking. Christina smiled at her friend. Yes, I certainly married well, laughed Lily. I used to mop floors in the office, and now I can afford to relax at such a resort. The week-long vacation enjoyed by both families refreshed them and brought some surprises. Christina felt unwell in the workshop when one of the craftsmen was heating lunch in the microwave. Oh my God! What a terrible smell! She covered her mouth with her hands, realizing she was about to be sick. Christina, are you okay? Stella, the craftsman who was waiting for her outside the restroom, asked. I don't know what to say, Christina said and rushed back into the cubicle. Returning a couple of minutes later, she said, I remember how my first pregnancy started. It seems like it's the same now. Well, congratulations. Stella beamed, cautiously hugging her. Thank you, but I need to make sure. Just please don't say anything to anyone. I want Andrew to find out first. Well, almost first. Christina, her husband said softly, hearing the exciting news. He looked at her with delight. You're amazing. He leaned down to her belly and kissed it through her shirt. Andrew, I'm almost 40. Do you think we can do this? Christina asked fearfully. We'll definitely make it work, my dear. Definitely. He hugged his wife gently, feeling like the luckiest person in the world.